Welcome to the Prospective Doctor podcast, brought to you by Med School Coach. Pre-med and medical students alike are encouraged to tune in each week for tips on how to become a strong med school candidate, gain acceptance into the school of your dreams, and succeed on your journey toward residency and becoming a doctor.
Hi, everybody. It's Arkita here with a very special guest, Dr. Erica Moseson. And she is a pulmonary and critical care doctor, as well as a founder of an educational website called Air Health, Our Health. And I'll just let Dr. Moseson tell us a little bit about herself.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be on this podcast. So my name's Erica Moseson. I'm a pulmonary and critical care medicine physician in Portland, Oregon. And I founded a website dedicated to educating people about the intersection between what we breathe and how it determines our health and many other factors of our life. I'm also the president of the Oregon Thoracic Society and one of the American Lung Association's health professionals for clean air and climate action. And I love my job. I got to say, the future in medicine is amazing.
That's awesome. It's very interesting because I was exploring your website and just to see how much climate change and everything affects, of course, pulmonary medicine. So my question is for you is how did you choose pulmonary and critical care as your specialty?
Well, I think I was one of those people who always had trouble choosing in medicine, which is how I picked medicine, because I liked so many different fields. I really enjoyed seeing, the more procedure-heavy fields. I liked the ICU. I liked clinic. I couldn't really decide, so I went into medicine. And then I had the same thing. I loved the ICU. It was kind of all like the medicine you see on TV, all the really exciting things happening and just really engaging. And then I also liked clinic. And then I remember I'd never really learned that much about pulmonary, I think, in med school. But then once I kind of started doing pulmonary rotations, honestly, to get into an ICU fellowship, because at the place I did residency at UCSF, they tended to want you to do both pulmonary and critical care. And so I started doing pulmonary rotations and loved it. It was so interesting because it's a field that intersects with every other field. So, the lungs are this huge filter to the body. So everything just shows up in them, right? Whether you're finding out, this is how someone finds out they have a rheumatologic disease. This is how you find out someone has a cancer. All sorts of different ways that other diseases interact with the lungs. And then the connection with outside world was so interesting. Just everything from occupational lung disease to asthma to pollen to just seeing how what people breathe determines so much of their lives. That's just been very interesting. So it's a field that kind of goes all the way from public health to crazy, starship level medicine with the ICU and cool procedures. And it's really a career that I think you can have a lot of different careers inside, which is you can kind of increase and decrease elements of your practice depending on where you're at in your life, which is always nice to build in to kind of avoid burnout.
That's awesome. Yeah, there seems to be so much variety in the field.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you have for a student who may have interest in the field in terms of how they can be successful on rotations or when applying for the match?
Well, I would say having specific interest in pulmonary and critical care is helpful. If you know early on as a student, then trying to pick programs that have a really strong pulmonary critical care program is a good idea, because not every residency actually has a fellowship in pulmonary or critical care, so they may not have a faculty. And so you don't necessarily need to pick somewhere that has a residency or has a fellowship. For example, I currently am attending at a community residency program, which is kind of fun. So we do have some fellows that rotate with us from Oregon Health and Science University, but we have a internal medicine residency program where a lot of the times, if you have a dedicated pulmonary critical care faculty that really works with people, that can be nice because you can get a lot of clinical exposure to the field. It can be more challenging to get some of the research qualifications met if you go to a place that doesn't have an actual pulmonary critical care faculty there, which can be more or less important depending on where you want to end up. So I think if you know early that you want to do pulmonary critical care, if you can kind of focus a little bit on that, on your interviews, on your rotations, kind of seeking out, where are programs that tend to be, welcoming to students, that have a kind of a whole breadth of options and opportunities in terms of research or clinical rotations, or if you really know what you want to do, kind of identifying that early is good. A lot of times people appreciate it if you can kind of put a story together about what you're wanting to do. And it's hard as a student because a lot of times you don't know what that story is, which can be really challenging. And that is hard.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point. Like if you know, of course, pursue the things, do the research, find programs that have strong fellowships already available. But if you don't know, it's okay. Like you're going to residency in internal medicine, if that's what you choose to do, leading to that way, to explore. So you'll be going through the different specialties and you can find mentorship and other activities and research projects.
Multiple clinical sites can also be helpful. So if you find a place that has, if you're really not sure, so for people who aren't sure, which was me, so I actually was really excited to go to UCSF, which is an amazing medicine residency. And one thing that was a big draw for me was that they had rotations at a VA hospital, at a county hospital, and at the university. So we were working in this entire range of locations. And that's really helpful, especially if you don't know what you want to do, because you get introduced to so many different things. I mean, internal medicine at San Francisco General Hospital is completely different from internal medicine at the VA, is completely different from internal medicine at the university hospital in terms of the diseases you'll see and the patients you're going to be treating. You get to see kind of all the nuances and the different ways of practicing medicine. And so if you don't know what you want to do, going to a residency program that rotates you through different hospitals can also open you up to a lot of different experiences.
That makes a lot of sense. Moving to a different topic, this year, 2020, this decade, there's been a lot of conversations, especially in the news, about the climate crises. And especially right now, at the point in time where we're recording, this summer has been full of a lot of fires out west and things like that. How does that impact you and your work?
Well, it's been an insane year for pulmonary critical care, I have to say. I mean, starting with COVID, where we were having conversations about where we can have enough ventilators in the state of Oregon. We have 640 ventilators. That's how many we have.
Wow.
And we were looking at these projections that were going to overwhelm us. So having to have these phone calls about decisions none of us hoped we would ever make. Fortunately, we got that under control. And then, we had the tear gas exposures, which were horrifying as a pulmonary doctor, diving into what that does to the human body. And then fire. I mean, right now outside my house, the PM 2.5 level is over 500 micrograms per meter squared. And if you're not intimately into particulate matter like I am, that is the equivalent of smoking over a pack a day for every single man, woman, and child in this population, right?
Wow.
And we know that that is not equally felt by everybody, right? So I'm a fairly privileged person living in a house with a very robust filtration system. So since that's a shared risk, right, that means that the people who are suffering from chronic homelessness, who are living in tents by our freeway, breathing particulate matter all the time, are probably smoking 2 to 3 packs a day equivalent in terms of just taking breaths here. And so we know that heart attacks go up, strokes go up, hospitalizations and ER visits for kids are going to go up. We know this just from these fires that have been happening in California. And this falls, like everything in medicine, disproportionately on communities of color, on communities suffering from chronic homelessness. Here in Oregon, on our indigenous communities, like the Warm Springs Reservation, which is frequently in the heart of our fires and can't get adequate air filtration. And so climate change just intersects with everything. It intersects with all these equity issues, justice issues, racial justice issues, economic issues, and health. There's this compounding effect of the populations that can kind of try to get themselves out of the way. That is going away, right? This climate change is coming for all of us. And we can either recognize that we are all in this together. I mean, I have 3 children, and to me, it's like we're collectively acting like toddlers as a society and just saying like, but I want to drive my car and eat my steak, and it's like, well, we have to make some choices and we have to make better choices. And if we make better choices early, the American Lung Association just came out with this amazing analysis about the economic and health benefits of transitioning to electrified transport. It's a complete win-win. And so that's one thing where I do think physicians have a really strong role to just make what is invisible visible. So I think fire is obviously very visible, right? You can see fire. Like fire is scary. Fire makes smoke. Everyone can see the smoke in the air. But all these other things seem more subtle. And so that's one of the things I try to focus on, is making the invisible visible, because it's visible to me. So as a pulmonary critical care doctor, I see people in my ICU all the time who are dying from asthma, COPD, heart attacks, and strokes, all of which are caused and worsened by lighting things on fire and breathing them in your lungs. And that is whether it's a tobacco, cigarette, diesel fuel, or the forest, they all generate particulate matter and all these things that make people sick, and I have to take care of them. So they're visible to me, right? So that heart attack doesn't come out of nowhere, right? We know that particulate matter causes heart attacks and strokes, right? And so it's one of those things where as a doctor, you can show up and say, no, this is real. Like, this is serious. This is killing people now, not just in the future. It's killing people now. And that costs money. So a lot of times people don't care about human life, which is sad, but they don't. They care about money. And so that's the other thing I really talk about is the catastrophic cost of this. So I talk about air health, our wealth, and that healthy people, healthy economies, right? And you have healthy people, you have to have healthy air. And I think doctors and medical students and health professionals and nurses and respiratory therapists can really speak to this because we see it all the time. None of us work for free. Like, I'll even just use that analogy. I'm like, it costs a lot of money to train me. We have a shortage of lung doctors. You can either make more lung doctors or clean up the air. Do you want to keep spending this much money on Medicaid and Medicare? Like, ask your state legislature that. Like, how much Medicaid is eating your budget? Like, you want a way to, like, decrease your Medicaid expenditures? Clean up the air. Like, how much an inhaler costs? It's $500 a month. Clean up the air. Like, just do it now.
I love that you brought up, like, yes, the things that are visible versus not being visible in terms of, like, the homelessness, the healthcare disparities that are all here and throughout things. Like, personally, I have asthma, but I can live in a place where I'm not as triggered as other people are. And for people to be homeless, and like you said, inhalers without insurance are astronomically high. I know personally,
and when you have the insurance, we're all paying for it. Like, nothing is free. Like, that's the thing is my patients will say, oh, well, I have insurance. And I'm like, okay, so then I'm paying for your inhaler. Like, it's not free. The pharmaceutical company is going to get their money, right? Like, it's either coming out of Medicare, Medicaid, or all of our healthcare premiums, right? Like, and the other thing is when that person misses a sick day, either if they're lucky enough to have paid sick leave, their employer has to pay a sick day, which is a drag on the economy and productivity, or that person doesn't have paid sick leave and they have to stay home sick, and then that's more money out of the family pocket that they don't spend in the economy. I mean, the Clean Air Act from 1970 to 1990 cost $500 billion, right? Our return on investment was over $22 trillion. We had a 20% annualized rate of economic return on investing in clean air. I like money. I enjoy getting paid. I like going on vacation. I like spending money. I'm not opposed to it. I think everyone would like to have more money. We can all have more money if we clean up the air. I mean, it's win-win, right? Clean up the air.
That is the truth. And speaking of that and how passionate you are, I really appreciate that. And as you said, you've been on a lot of boards and organizations and things trying to help improve life for our patients and for everyone. So with your activism, how would you suggest staying true to being an activist on issues close to your heart while going through training and then incorporating it eventually into your practice?
I think the way to be an effective physician, either activist or advocate, and I kind of prefer the term advocate because I think the idea of carrying a voice, the idea of carrying the voice of the people who aren't being heard and then hopefully eventually helping them be heard. But my patients literally can't breathe. I mean, they can't leave their house. They are on oxygen. And so they get invisible. People forget about it. Like, I've had patients who, like, they couldn't make it to clinic appointments so many times because they were at the bus stop at the wrong time and the traffic pollution was too bad. You know, they were kind of scared to come. I mean, it was something that if you can kind of speak a little bit as their doctor and say, this is real. And I think one thing that students can do along the journey, because it's really hard when you're a student and a resident and a fellow where you have very little time and you're also kind of worried because there's a lot of bias in our evaluations as med students, right? There's a lot of kind of performing for people, a team you work with for like a week, and you have to make some kind of snap impression. And so it's hard, right? So you don't want to necessarily be speaking out too much on your team because you're worried sometimes about, like, what are people going to think? Or what if you're in this kind of a part of the country where maybe the politics don't agree with yours and you're kind of just trying to get by, or you're aware of all the issues of, like, bias and microaggressions and everything. But one thing I would say is there's an issue you're passionate about, I guarantee it intersects with medicine. Like, I can't think of anything that doesn't intersect with medicine. So if you are passionate about fair housing and homelessness, like, I have patients who I have fought so hard to get them Section 8 housing vouchers to get them out of their like moldy, rat-infested God where they were living. They get into clean housing and they suddenly need fewer inhalers and they don't come see me anymore because their asthma's better. So if you care about housing, if you care about racial justice issues, like all these things, or if you care about, eosinophilic biology related to jet fuel for populations living under an airport, like all these things intersect. And so what I would do is you kind of need to find things that have a synergy for you because you don't have that much time. So if you can engage research, I think is very important because it helps you understand how to tell the story of the science. So doctors are storytellers, right? So doctor means teacher, right? Our job is to teach our patients and our job is to teach the policymakers and the people who don't know. And our job is to translate science to people. And so you do want to learn how to do the science if you can, whether it's basic science or clinical science, like really kind of getting a sense of how is a study designed, where can it go wrong, how does it get messed up, to know kind of how to read it so that you can tell the story of the science. And you kind of need it to get into fellowship, right? Those fellowships are going to want you to have done some research or anything like that. So if you can find a synergy in something that you can become a good voice in, right? Because the other thing is you also want to be right. You want to have the science back you up, because one of the ways that people, very well-meaning, get things wrong and hurt causes of advancing things is by picking the wrong project or picking the wrong thing to do where the science doesn't back you up, because there's so many, unforeseen consequences or bad side effects of things. So really studying something and becoming an expert in it can be really helpful and also help you find out what the real problem is or where you can kind of leverage something to make a problem better and become a better advocate in the future. So I would say, since research is so important in the path of becoming a doctor, trying to marry research and advocacy, like doing research on, asthma disparities or COPD disparities, or my gosh, our veterans are mistreated and abused. Like if you're at a VA hospital, even just looking at systems in the VA that could improve, or how the veterans are affected there. And it's a really good place to do clinical research because they have massive databases. So I think the synergy of getting educated in the issues you're passionate about while a student, and then you can be doing, letter writing, campaigning, like protesting, or, getting out the vote, all those other things on the side, but really kind of developing a core expertise in the issue that gets you excited is a thing you can be doing as part of your education.
That's a really good point, because as physicians, a lot of organizations, advocacy groups, and everything look to us for expert advice. And if we're giving advice, we should know it very well. So finding something that you're passionate about and actually learning all of the evidence and doing all of the research and things will definitely help, as well as prepare you for your future when you're going through these different components of your medical education and training. So I really love that. And then in addition to that, with all of the things you mentioned that are going on in this year alone, like the racial unrest, the climate change issues, the political things, like it's okay to pursue those as well, because medicine doesn't have to be your only passion. And like you said, medicine can intersect with almost anything in life. So pursue your goals and pursue your wishes and pursue the things that you're passionate about, but also gain the knowledge that you need to progress in medicine.
You kind of can start to figure out your own system. You can also then be a credible voice in your organization, because groups of people are always very well-meaning, but any individual only has part of the picture. And that's where science can help have more of a picture, right? So there might be someone in a group who's like, oh, I want to do this and it's going to solve all the problems. But as having trained in science, you could be like, I could see these being potential downsides that we're not anticipating, or just recognizing to execute this project is going to cost this and we don't have it. So let's focus on something where we have capital or have the ability to do it. I think science kind of helps with that analysis. And then, there's ways to be involved, and you can kind of look at things that scale. You can't maybe, take 3 years off and go do a voter mobilization effort, but you can write some vote forward letters at night, or you can, write some postcards, or help get people to the polls locally if voting's a big passion for you, and which it should be for everybody. But
yes,
you can kind of roll things in your life as you go.
Absolutely. I really appreciate all of the words of wisdom that you've given us about climate change and medicine in general, and how to work through this journey called medicine. What is one final pearl that you'd like to leave to pre-medical students and medical students who are kind of at the beginning of their journey?
Don't light things on fire and breathe them into your lungs.
I feel like my mom told me that when I was kind of like 14
I put it
or
on
so.
a t-shirt.
But I think that we may need to reinforce it. Or maybe tell people don't light things on fire to like reveal genders and then set forests on fire.
That you also should not do. That'll be the next t-shirt I make. Exactly.
Oh gosh, but this was so fun and I really appreciate you, and I'm sure we'll be happy to have you back and maybe talk about some more pulmonary things in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a good field. It's a fun field. I recommend it.
Thanks for coming again, and everybody else. We'll be back again next week with another episode.
Each episode of the Prospective Doctor podcast is brought to you by Med School Coach. To access articles, videos, webinars, and free tools to help you succeed on your journey toward med school and beyond, visit our website, prospectivedoctor.com. We hope you tune in again next time.